Nandana Vraja Janaranjana
Vraja Janaranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, text number 45, which is on the next page. Okay, please repeat. Tan Vai Hi Asadvritibhir Akshibhir Ye Parahritantar Manasa Paresha Atho Na Pashyanti Urugaya Nunam Ye Te Padanyasa Vilasa Lakshyaha Tanvaya sadvrittibhirakshibhirye Tanvaya sadvrittibhirakshibhirye Parahritantar manasaf paresha Parahritantar manasaf paresha Atho na pashyantyurugaya nunam Atho na pashyantyurugaya nunam Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshya Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshyaha Tanvayya sadvrittibhirakshibhirye Parahritantar manasaf paresha Adho na pashyantyurugaya nunam Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshyaha Tanvayya sadvrittibhirakshibhirye Parahritantar manasaf paresha Adho na pashyantyurugaya nunam Yete padanyasa vilasa lakshyaha
Rakshibhirye Parahitantar Manasah Paresha Atona Pashyantyurugayanunam Yete Padanyasa Vilasha Lakshya Pashyantyurugayanunam
Matadus. Tan, the lotus feet of the Lord. Vai, certainly. He, for. Asat, materialistic. Vrittibihi, by those who are influenced by external energy. Akshibhihi, by the senses. Ye, those. Parahrata, missing at a distance. Anta manasaha, of the internal mind. Paresha, O Supreme. Ato, therefore. Na, never. Pashyanti, can see. Urugaya, O great. Nunam, but. Ye, those who. Te, your. Padanyasa, activities. Vilasa, transcendental enjoyment. Lakshyaha, those who see. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O great Supreme Lord, offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet, but they are seen by your pure devotees, whose one and only aim is to transcendentally enjoy your activities. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861, the Lord is situated in everyone's heart. It is natural that one should be able to see the Lord at least within himself, but that is not possible for those whose internal vision has been covered by external activities. The pure soul, which is symptomized by consciousness, can be easily perceived even by a common man because consciousness is spread all over the body. The yoga system as recommended in Bhagavad Gita is to concentrate the mental activities internally and thus see the lotus feet of the Lord within oneself. But there are many so-called yogis who have no concern with the Lord, but are only concerned with consciousness, which they accept as the final realization. Such realization of consciousness is taught by Bhagavad Gita within only a few minutes, whereas the so-called yogis take continuous years to realize it because of their offenses at the lotus feet of the Lord. The greatest offense is to deny the existence of the Lord as separate from the individual souls, or to accept the Lord and the individual soul as one and the same. The impersonalists misinterpret the theory of reflection, and thus they wrongly accept the individual consciousness as the supreme consciousness. The theory of the reflection of the Supreme can be clearly understood without difficulty by any sincere common man. When there is a reflection of the sky on the water, both the sky and the stars are seen within the water, but it is understood that the sky and the stars are not to be accepted on the same level. The stars are parts of the sky, and therefore they cannot be equal to the whole. The sky is the whole, and the stars are parts. They cannot be one and the same. Transcendentalists who do not accept the supreme consciousness as separate from the individual consciousness are as offensive as the materialists who deny even the existence of the Lord. Such offenders cannot actually see the lotus feet of the Lord within themselves, nor are they even able to see the devotees of the Lord. The devotees of the Lord are so kind that they roam to all places to enlighten people in God consciousness. The offenders, however, lose the chance to receive the Lord's devotees, although the offenseless common man is at once influenced by the Lord's presence. The devotee's presence. In this connection, there's an interesting story of a hunter and Devarishi Narada. A hunter in the forest, although a great sinner, was not an intentional offender. He was at once influenced by the presence of Narada, and he agreed to take the path of devotion, leaving aside his hearth and home. But the offenders, Nalakuvar and Manigriva, even though living amongst the demigods, had to undergo the punishment of becoming trees in their next lives, although by the grace of a devotee, they were later delivered by the Lord. Offenders have to wait until they receive the mercy of devotees, and then they can become eligible to see the lotus feet of the Lord within themselves. But due to their offenses and their extreme materialism, they cannot see even the devotees of the Lord. Engaged in external activities, they kill the internal vision. The Lord's devotees, however, do not mind the offenses of the foolish in their many gross and subtle bodily endeavors. The Lord's devotees continue to bestow the blessings of devotion upon all such offenders without hesitation. That is the nature of devotees. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, many points in this verse, and purport, of course. The first one being, Srila Prabhupada brings up this in the second sentence here. Well, the verse, of course, is talking about offensive persons whose internal vision has been too affected by external materialistic activities cannot see your lotus feet. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, second sentence, that it's natural that one should be able to see the Lord, at least within himself. So, a major objection to the existence of the soul and the existence of God is, of course, by naturalists and empiricists, is that if there is a God, if there is a soul, specifically if there is, it does apply for both actually. If there is a God, if there is a soul, then I should be able to see it. I should be able to, most people are of the ethos that seeing is believing, and that if there is a God, then he should make himself so apparently obvious to me that there would be no scope for denying him. To deny his existence would just be something like denying the fact that I exist. And then, of course, the same goes for the soul. They say that, we've performed so many, we've analyzed the body to a large extent. We know how the body works, and nowhere in those, in that study, in that field, has there ever been the discovery of anything like a soul. So if a soul exists, I should be able to see it. And Srila Prabhupada in this purport, interestingly, concurs that actually, yes, you should be able to see it. And that naturally, one does see it. However, as Srila Prabhupada elaborates here, you need the proper instruments to see it. You need the proper tools to see it. Just like if I were to, say, go around the world with a speedometer, and I was to say, okay, with this speedometer, I am going to I'm going to analyze, the world around me, and I'm going to figure out what it's composed of, what its activities are, what its nature is. I will go all over the world no matter where I go. I will only see velocity. Why? Because that's the tool that I have. I have a speedometer. Similarly, if you have a barometer, you can measure atmospheric pressure. If you have a thermometer, you can measure temperature. So based on the tools that I have, based on the instruments of perception that I have and that I use, the nature of what I perceive will change. The nature of my perception will change. So, similarly also, in order to perceive the soul, in order to perceive God, we have no problem, actually, with that objection that, I should be able to see God. Yeah, great, go for it. But you won't be able to see God with your, as I've heard said before, with your meatball eyes. Because God, there's a name for Krishna, which is Adhokshaja. Adhokshaja means one who is above the senses. And there's a verse actually also, Atashri Krishna Namadi, Nabhaved Grahyam Indriyai, that Krishna, in his name and form and pastimes and all these, his attributes, Nabhaved Grahyam Indriyai, they're not perceived, they're not able to be, Grahyam literally means grasped, they're not able to be grasped by Indriyai, by our senses. It means our mundane, kind of worldly, material senses. Krishna is not, cannot be seen by these eyes, cannot be perceived also by our, you could say, material mind. It requires a change, actually, of the faculties of perception in order, if we want to perceive Krishna or anything spiritual. Just like if I want to see infrared light, I need a special instrument. There's infrared light in this room right now, but our eyes are wired in such a way that there's a spectrum of visible light. Beyond that, there is light, but there's only a spectrum, a small portion of that light that we can actually see with these eyes. So, if it's true of even material things, even something like light, if it's true that we're required to change our instruments of perception in order to perceive even things like light, certain kinds of light, then it's quite reasonable also to accept that if one wants to perceive something spiritual, something wholly outside of this world, it requires a pretty serious change in our instruments of perception. And so therefore this objection that if God exists or if the soul exists, then I should be able to see it, I should be able to perceive it. Of course perception is there, like Srila Prabhupada says. The pure soul, which is symptomized by consciousness, can be easily perceived even by a common man because consciousness is spread all over the body. So yes, in one sense, the soul can be perceived by its effects, just like the wind can also be perceived by, you can see the trees blowing in the wind, you can see its effects. So in the same way, you can perceive the soul also by its effects, namely consciousness, that I am separate from my body, I am not my body, but I can understand that the soul is present within the body because I'm conscious of this body. I'm conscious that if I slap myself or pinch myself, it kind of hurts. And, whatever, if I eat something nice, it feels very nice. Or if I get a massage or something like that, it feels very nice. So we're conscious of the feelings and the pains and pleasures of this body. So in that sense, by its symptoms, the soul can be perceived. But there's this verse that comes up I'm actually not sure which, it's in one of the Puranas. I think it might be Padma Purana. Of course, that's kind of a safe bet. Padma Purana is so huge. But we'll say it's from Padma Purana. It's the verse goes, Chakshurvena yatha deepam drishtva darpanameva cha samipasthana pashyanti tatha vishnum bahirmukha. So Chakshurvena means without eyes. Chakshurvena yatha deepam drishtva darpanameva cha. So if somebody doesn't have eyes, if they have no eyes at all, then they're not going to be able to see, even if you give them a lamp or if you give them a mirror to see themselves. They're not going to be able to see. It's not possible. So in the same way, one who is not spiritually situated, one who is not situated, especially on the platform which this verse is emphasizing, the platform of devotion to Krishna, then one won't be able to see him. One won't be able to see. Samipastha napashyanti. They won't be able to see. Tatha vishnum bahirmukha. Those who are, this verse that I'm quoting specifically says those who are averse to Krishna, those who are averse to this verse as Vishnu, they won't be able to see. Because they don't have the instruments to do so. Their senses, their body does not become spiritualized on account of being linked with Krishna in yoga, and therefore they don't have the ability to perceive spiritual, even things like spiritual topics. They don't have the ability to understand spiritual topics. They don't have the ability to perceive, like in this verse we were reading, even other spiritualists, people who are spiritually situated, devotees of the Lord, like that. Because ultimately, Krishna, God, being a person, being somebody who has, a person not in the sense of a human being, of course, but a person in the sense of a personal entity. He has, consciousness, he has desires, he's, of course, a free agent. So, God being the controller of everything, Krishna being the controller of everything, he has the agency, he has the prerogative to choose whom he reveals himself to. Therefore, this verse comes in Bhagavad Gita, Naham prakasha sarvasya, yoga maya samavrataha. He says, to some people, Naham prakasha sarvasya, he says, I'm not manifest to everybody. Yoga maya samavrataha. I'm covered by my yoga maya potency, by my by my potency of, my illusory potency. I'm covered by that. So who gets to perceive God? Of course, yes, those who have spiritual senses, like we were talking about earlier. But how one develops those, how one is given those, it's not by our own effort, so to speak. There's no way that we can, by some, scientific process or something like that, spiritualize our senses. There's no way to manipulate our senses in such a way that they just become spiritual. Ultimately, the emphasis which is given in the Vedas and Shastra, or scripture, is that Krishna, that the Supreme is experienced or known. Well, there's this verse, actually, I'll just quote the verse. Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuda shrutena. That Atma, or in this case we understand Atma to mean Krishna, the Supreme Lord. He is not labhya. Labhya means like Nayam atma pravachanena labhya. He's not obtained by medhaya, na medhaya. Medha means intelligence. So he's not just perceived or obtained by intelligence, na medhaya, na bahuda shrutena, or just by hearing all kinds of, different philosophies. Of course, on the plea of, so many things. Na medhaya, na bahuda shrutena. Yame vaisha vrnute tena labhyas tasyesha atma vivrunute tanum svam, that the Supreme Krishna is obtained or perceived by one whom he chooses, who Krishna chooses. Because ultimately, Krishna is, again, a free agent. He is a person in the sense that he has desires, he has consciousness, he has free will. And so, just like you or me, if I were, to meet somebody on the street, there are things which I'm not obliged to reveal to somebody. Just somebody I meet, there's things that I'm not obliged to reveal to them. Like whatever, anyway, private things about my life or this and that. I'm not obliged to reveal myself to them. Even if they ask, even if they say, hey man, like, what's your, what do you got going on, like, in your brain and stuff like that, like what's, what are all your, tell me all your problems, tell me all your like trauma and stuff like that. I'm not obliged to reveal that to anybody. So what to speak of Krishna? Even if somebody asks, even if somebody would like to know Krishna, at least, we can say on a philosophical level, Krishna is not obliged to reveal himself to anybody. He is a free agent, and he's not bound by the desires of anybody else, just like in many ways also we are. Now, of course, ours is qualified. We're certainly not as independent as Krishna, but that is there, at least to an extent. So, in that way, Krishna is only obtained, Krishna is only revealed to one whom he chooses. And so, therefore, there's this verse and that comes up in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Brahman Brahmite kono bhagyavan jeev, Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. That there are so many souls wandering throughout the world, throughout the universe, in different species of life. Brahman Brahmite kono bhagyavan jeev. So if one of those souls who's wandering, Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij, they receive the bhakti lata bij, or the seed of devotion to Krishna, the seed of, we could say, bhakti yoga, by the mercy of Krishna. Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. They receive it by the mercy of Krishna. Mercy, in the sense we can understand, it's an act of compassion from you could say, from somebody in a higher position to somebody in a lower position. It's doing something or going out of their way to do something that they don't have to do, given their position, to somebody who might not even deserve it, or might not even, that is not obliged in any way to receive, be on the receiving end of that action. So Krishna is God. Perhaps that's sufficient to understand his position. But he's God, he's all-powerful, he's all-knowing, he's omniscient, he's everywhere, he's the creator of everything, he's the controller of everything. We, on the other hand, are very small. We are minute particles, just like Srila Prabhupada is making the distinction here. The sky and the stars. The sky is so huge. It's huge compared to, if you look, in the sky, these little tiny stars, compared to the whole vast sky. So in a similar way, we are very small. Krishna's very big. And like I said, he doesn't have to give us anything, actually. Doesn't have to give us anything spiritually, materially, whatever it is. But out of his mercy, out of his compassion for us, one who is fortunate, kono bhagyavan jeev. Bhagyavan means fortunate. One who is fortunate receives by the mercy of Krishna the seed of devotion to him. And how is that received? It's received through transcendental instructions. It's received through instructions, especially like this. The verse also says, Guru Krishna prasade pai. By the mercy of Krishna, one receives instruction from a guru, from a devotee of Krishna, as to how to execute the process of Krishna consciousness, or how to mold one's life in such a way that he can receive further knowledge of Krishna, further realization of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, in his purport to this verse, describes that the seed of devotion, the Bhakti Lata Bij, is the methods and regulations by which one is perfectly trained in Krishna consciousness. So the seed of devotion to Krishna are the methods by which one becomes perfectly trained, or in terms of philosophy, one can understand the world and see the world in such a way that he's always remembering Krishna and Krishna's influence in his life, and of course Krishna's attributes and Krishna's role in the world, and also by which one can mold their behavior and their actions so that they can remain in that state of consciousness. They can remain, they don't do things which are barriers or obstacles to maintaining that consciousness of Krishna at all times. So this is the seed of devotion, because by molding one's life in this way, by molding one's mind to think in certain ways, by molding one's actions to influence their mind and their consciousness in certain ways, then eventually, just like if you have a seed and you water that seed, ultimately it will sprout. It will sprout. These different actions will ultimately lead to serious, real spiritual experience in one's life. They will lead to one's experiencing devotion to Krishna. Therefore, they're described as the seed of devotion. There's another verse which comes up in the Upanishads. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. That one who has an acharya, or one who has a guru who can train them and who can show them the proper path. Acharyavan Purusho Veda. They know. They can know. And it's described. The example this is given in that Upanishad explaining this verse, or this little, sutra, you could say, that if one is dropped off, if one is just dropped in the middle of a country, unfamiliar country, there's no way by one's own effort to find their way out or their way back home. I mean, maybe you could, but it certainly is not the direct path, or the or the most efficient way to do it. Therefore, also in this verse, or in this purport here, Srila Prabhupada is talking about the yoga system mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and the so-called yogis. So-called yogis in the sense that how does Krishna choose people? Is Krishna just shooting in the dark? This verse that I quoted earlier, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev. What does it mean to be Bhagyavan? What does it mean to be fortunate? Is it just by chance? Is it just by again, is Krishna just shooting in the dark and you just have to, hope that he hits you or something like that? No. One is fortunate if one has a desire, if one has a sincere desire to become Krishna conscious, if one has a sincere desire to become spiritually elevated, serious desire, then Krishna puts him in situations whereby he can receive that Bhakti Lata Bij, where he can receive that seed of devotion, where he can receive further knowledge. So, on the other hand, there are some people who, yes, they do have some desire to become spiritually elevated. They do have some desire or some knowledge beyond the material world. However, there's something else there also. It's mixed. It's mixed with some kind of personal desire also. Therefore, these people especially, Srila Prabhupada is referring to the so-called yogis, they're especially concerned with, of course we also use this term, but they're especially concerned with self-realization. And I'll explain also why we use that term also. Self-realization in the sense of, I want to realize myself, I want to know who I am, I want to know who I want to know who I am, and I want to become liberated. I want to become liberated because I don't want to suffer anymore. So ultimately, while this is it's a subtle, definitely a subtle material desire. It's definitely it's not gross like somebody who desires to whatever just I don't know gorge themselves or smoke crack or something like that. It's certainly more subtle than that, but it is still, and we would, I guess you could say, criticize it as a personal desire, and one that is actually an obstacle to full spiritual realization. Now, again, we also use this term, self-realization. Actually, it's written on the cover in big letters on one of our books, so it might be confusing. However, self-realization, realizing who we are, is valuable because who we are is a servant of Krishna. We have a relationship with Krishna. So it's not that we should, like Srila Prabhupada writes here, they're only concerned, so-called yogis are only concerned with consciousness. So we are not wholly and solely just concerned with realizing our consciousness and realizing our position beyond the material nature and just ending it there. We want to have a relationship with Krishna. We want to serve Krishna with love. And therefore, self-realization is only valuable in as far as it brings us to that point, in as far as we can understand that we are servants of the Lord and that we should then forget about ourselves and then serve Krishna and dedicate our lives to Krishna. That's the value of self-realization. Of course, we also use that where it's kind of a buzzword nowadays. Not just nowadays, it's been a buzzword for some time in terms of, in spiritual circles, so it's good for preaching. So that's why we use that term. But that's not the final realization, as Srila Prabhupada says here. They're only concerned with consciousness, which they accept as the final realization. But it's not the final realization. It's a subsidiary realization. It's a preliminary realization. And for those who are just concerned with that, Krishna says, fine, you have some desire. It's better than, like I said, smoking crack. So better you just do that. And so Krishna gives them he gives them processes, and he even gives them shastras, which tell them, yes, consciousness is the final goal. Yes, he gives them shastras, he gives them acharyas, he gives them everything, so that they can have, there's that verse, yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta, shradayarchutamicchati, tasya tasyachalam. What's that? Tasya tasyachalam. What's the last? Yeah. Anyway, that's the tasya tasyachalam. Anyway, he's talking about their shraddha, that he makes their faith in those processes, in those acharyas, achala, strong. He makes them firm. He gives them firm faith in those processes. Krishna's talking about demigod worship in this verse, but anyway, you could see how it applies. That Krishna gives them shastras, he gives them acharyas, he gives them the intelligence to interpret. Even shastras like Srimad Bhagavatam. Mayavadis also like Srimad Bhagavatam, as much as we don't like to say it. But in every single canto, there's something for Mayavadis. There's some verse or this or that. If you look, there's something for Mayavadis in every single shastra, everywhere. Because Krishna, as the super soul and as the supreme friend of all living beings, he wants to give them what they want. And so Krishna gives the Mayavadis, he gives the yogis, he gives the Mayavadis facility to have this realization. Because they have some personal desires there to, to be comfortable or to be this or that, to avoid suffering. But it's an offense, actually. Although Krishna facilitates it, although you could say it's just born out of some kind of innocent kind of ignorance, it is an offense to the Supreme Lord. Why? Because just like if I were to, let's say we're here at Krishna Life, Vishnu Chitta Prabhu is the temple president, Chandanacharya Prabhu is the vice temple president, Jita Girish Prabhu is the temple commander, Janardhan Krishna Prabhu is the Sankirtan leader. If I were to try to take any of their positions, if I were to, or let's say I'm not even going to try to take their position, where let's say I go to Janardhan Krishna Prabhu and I talk to him and I refer to myself as like the co-Sankirtan leader. Or if I go to Vishnu Chitta Prabhu and I say that I'm like the co-temple president. It's weird. You don't do that. It's bizarre. It's antisocial behavior. Because it's not true. It's not true that I'm that. I'm not the vice or co-temple president. Me and Vishnu Chitta Prabhu are not managing this temple together. In the same way that the Jivas and Krishna, they're not like this, in the sense that they're not like, on the same level. It's not that I am, I'm also the enjoyer of the rasa dance. It's not that I'm also Narayan. Okay, it's 8:20. I'll go for 5 more minutes, and then we can have questions. It's not that I'm also Vaikuntapati. It's not that I'm also all of these things. My position is different. And so therefore, somebody who tries to take the position of the Supreme Lord, it's offensive. It's offensive to the Supreme Lord, actually, because it's quite presumptuous to think that the minute living entity is anywhere near the position of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, Krishna takes offense to it, but he facilitates it. He does facilitate it. And you could say, why should he facilitate that? Why would he facilitate an offense? Why would he facilitate the jiva's offense of thinking themselves one with the Supreme Lord? There could be multiple answers to that. One is that Krishna just pretty much fulfills any desire. I mean, he fulfills the desires of the living entity to, I'll bring it up again, smoke crack, and whatever, do all kinds of sinful activities. He facilitates them. He puts them in situations whereby they can obtain whatever kind of gross sense gratification they want. That's one answer. Another answer could also be that it's not as bad as other things. There is some kind of, at least there is some kind of faith in Shastra. At least there is some kind of faith in somebody but themselves, somebody or something beyond themselves. So that's there. And then often also for impersonalists, especially those who aren't grossly offensive impersonalists. Of course, anyway, there's kind of 2 categories we usually talk about in terms of impersonalists. There's grossly offensive impersonalists who outright deny the existence of the Supreme Lord. They blaspheme the Supreme Lord. And anyway, there was one Bhagavad Gita commentary. It was written by a very famous Acharya from Maharashtra. And he writes in that commentary that one who doesn't accept Sayujya Mukti from Krishna is a rascal, he's a fool, he's an impudent son who doesn't accept the inheritance of that the father is giving him. So those kinds of impersonalists, not very auspicious. But there's other kinds of impersonalists like, anyway, this person whose house we went to last night, they're nice, generally pious people, they're just kind of misinformed. But and I guess you could even see it, you could see how this purport applies to even where we went last night, is that they are put in situations whereby they can associate with devotees. And based on how that goes, they either obtain further mercy of Krishna, or from Krishna, or they become more degraded. So then Srila Prabhupada brings up these 2 examples here of Mrigari. Mrigari, grossly sinful, horribly sinful person. Half killing animals, torturing animals. But it was just what he did. He was an innocently ignorant person, He wasn't just completely puffed up and proud of his position. And so therefore, when he got the association of Narada Muni, Srila Prabhupada says here, he was at once influenced by the presence of Narada, and he agreed to take the path of devotion, leaving aside his hearth and home. So he was open-minded, humble, and just, again, kind of innocently ignorant. And he was innocent enough, despite his sinful activity, that he could be influenced by the association of a devotee. He didn't offend Narada Muni. But Nalakuvra and Manigriva, despite their elevated position, despite them being the sons of Kuvera, living in the heavenly planets, with, of course, very developed intelligence. Heavenly body means you're very smart. But they were bewildered. They were bewildered, and they misused their position. They misused their elevated position. And therefore, when they got the association of Narada Muni, in passing, of course, quite literally actually in passing, Narada Muni was passing by, they weren't influenced by his association. They weren't moved to become more devotional. They weren't moved to become sadhakas or devotees of the Lord. And so therefore they were punished. But even in that punishment, Srila Prabhupada brings up, and this is the last point I'll make, even in that punishment, the devotees of the Lord are so merciful that although sometimes they act as instruments, as the instruments of the Supreme Lord to punish the living entities, for instance, of course this is in Kali Yuga, these things are a little bit different. The devotees of the Lord aren't exactly going around and punishing the living entities. But at least for us, yes, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote also very strong words about materialists. Strong words cutting their attachments, cutting their philosophies down. And it stings. They don't like it. And it hurts. And it does, actually. It hurts the false ego. It hurts when one's conceptions of oneself, even very fundamental conceptions of oneself and one's worldview, you feel stupid. You feel like an idiot. And nobody wants to feel like that. Therefore, oftentimes they become defensive. But, so even though the devotees of the Lord act as instruments for punishing the living entities, or kind of cutting down the living entities' conceptions and things like that, it's the mercy of the devotees. Actually, it's the mercy of the devotees. And Krishna himself, actually, Srila Prabhupada brings up the point that actually not even Krishna is that merciful. That Krishna, he instructs in Bhagavad Gita, don't disturb these people. Just leave them alone. They're going to do what they want. But Srila Prabhupada says that actually the devotees of the Lord are more merciful than the Supreme Lord. Because, why? They understand the purpose of the Lord. And so therefore, to accomplish that purpose, they do. They roam around like, this is a nice sentence here. Yes, they do not mind the offenses of the foolish in their many gross and subtle bodily endeavors. Well, that's not the one I wanted to read. It says they roam. Where is it? Yes. The devotees of the Lord are so kind that they roam to all places to enlighten people in God consciousness. They don't take into account, this person's a moron, this person's a mudha, this person's a... Of course, Madhyamadikaris, they do. They discern that this person is a mudha, this person is a devotee, this person is this person is that. This person needs to be preached to in a particular way or otherwise. And so they do. But they are so merciful that no matter who it is, some kind of, they try to make some kind of arrangement. They try to speak in a particular kind of way that these persons can be elevated. Somehow or other, just by hook or by crook. Yena tena prakarena manakrishna niveshayet. Somehow or other, they can try to engage the minds of the living entities in the service of Krishna. So that's the mercy of the devotees. Without hesitation, it says here. That's the nature of devotees. Srila Prabhupada said that Vaishnava is a perfect gentleman. He's kind. And we see, if you look at the qualities of the Vaishnavas, the 26 qualities mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Yeah, I mean, you can imagine meeting somebody. And of course, Srila Prabhupada imbibed all of those qualities in full. And the pure devotees, all of them, no matter who they are, they imbibe all of those qualities in full. And when you meet somebody like that, when you meet somebody who imbibes all of those Vaishnava qualities in full, it's so inspiring, it's so enlivening, and it motivates one and it enthuses one to themselves try to develop those qualities. So to the extent that we can do that, to the extent that we can try our best to develop and to meditate on the qualities of devotees, the qualities, the 26 qualities of Vaishnava, and try in our lives to imbibe them, then yes, to that extent we'll be able to enthuse people and help, inspire people to become Krishna conscious. So I'll stop there. There's 1 minute for questions, if there's anything. Sorry, I went a little late.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I'm just gonna kind of build this question up just to make sure I'm on the right track. So you're saying that like being engaged in a materialistic lifestyle, it's better than smoking crack, right? But Krishna facilitates, or it's a higher engagement than doing that type of activity. So Krishna provides the karma kanda and acharyas for these type of people, but are we to understand that it is not that much better, from the overall perspective,
I mean, Srila Prabhupada says in that purport also, I forgot to mention that the offenders to the Lord, like the Mayavadis, they're no better than those who deny the existence of the Lord. So that's also there. That it's in one sense you could see it all falls in one category. It's all material sense gratification, but there are certain kinds of material sense gratification that are more conducive for, one's eventually developing Krishna consciousness. Namely sense gratification in the mode of goodness. If you're going to gratify your senses, at least do it in the mode of goodness. Because that sattva gun is a springboard by which one can eventually develop. Anyway, it's a good platform by which one can eventually develop their Krishna consciousness. So, anyway, I'm sorry, I went a little bit late, but okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.